Now for this figure 4 trap, I'm going to need 3 pieces of wood for the trigger. I'm going to need an upright piece, a cross section like a 4 has, that angles downward, and then a trigger or a piece that goes parallel to the ground and connects the other two, the upright and the diagonal piece. So now I have one piece of my trap, and it has what I'm going to call a long angled cut on this side. What I'm going to need now on the other side is a short angle cut. So I'm going to start a little bit closer to the end, and I'm going to put that in there. So now I've got a short and a long cut. What that's going to do is it's going to give me a place for this 4 to teeter on, okay? And I want my long cut on the inside of the 4. So when I make this 4, it's going to go this way and then across parallel to the ground. So what I'm going to do now is take my thumb on my left hand, because I'm right-handed, and I'm going to put it on the short angle and rotate this so that the short angle is facing up, facing me, and I'm going to carve straight down this side. Like so. And I'm going to carve that till I've got a nice flat spot all the way down on that short side. Okay, there's my flat spot. There's my short side. Okay, now, because I'm right-handed, I'm going to take this and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees to the left. And I'm going to do the same thing and carve straight down on that side. By doing that, what I've just done is I've made a 90-degree corner right here. Right there is going to actually be where my trigger catches. So that's very important that we do that the right way and that we have that corner there. Now you notice that I'm not going to carve the rest of the bark off of this. The reason I'm not going to do that is because I don't want this to dry out quickly, shrink and crack. So I'm going to leave the bark on so that the only places that it's going to let moisture escape is the exposed areas, and that's going to be really important. Now with a figure 4, this trap is very unique because it is going to be matched exactly with the other 2 pieces. If I mix them up with other traps, then it won't actually work. Okay? So what I need to do is take this piece and cut another piece that is the same length as this. And one last thing I wanted to show you about the tip of this is, notice this right here. This is kind of sharp. I want this to be a little bit duller, a little bit flatter on top. So I'm going to carve this just ever so slightly across the top, because I don't want a knife edge up there. I want it to be a little bit flat, like that, so that it will hold the load or the weight and it won't dig into the next piece. Okay, so I'm going to set this one down after measuring it off here. And again, where I've marked it, I'm going to do that same thing where I'm just going to take my blade and I'm going to rock it back and forth like this, all the way around, pushing so that I can create a cut all the way around that branch. Alright, so you can see and that by doing that it goes through really cleanly. Now with this piece I'm going to again make a long cut and a short cut. Okay, and I'm going to do that on this flat side right here. Alright, so I'll start with my short side first by starting closer to this edge instead of farther away. By starting farther back I'll get a long cut. By starting close I'm going to get a short cut. Okay, and what I've done here is I have taken this and I've cut it so that I got just to the heartwood, which is the very center of the limb or the tree, right through there. And that's kind of what I'm going to use as my mark to guide how far I've gone. Now I'm going to take this and turn it over so that I'm now going to carve on this side, on the opposite side of it, a long cut. So I'm going to gauge from the side here where I started, and I'm going to start farther back. Okay, so now I've got a long cut and a short cut, and I've got an edge here that's not razor sharp, but it's flat and it's fairly narrow. That's going to help me out because it's going to be able to grip, and it's going to not slip, or it's going to fit into a very small whistle notch piece. On this side, however, we are going to make a whistle notch on this end, and if you notice, what I'm using here is the long side, or the long cut, and I'm going to use that as my guide. That's the same side, or the same place along here that I want my whistle notch to be. I'm going to start it in about a half an inch to an inch from the end of this. So about like that, okay, or about the distance from my thumb, the tip of my thumb to my knuckle, okay. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push straight down with the hilt of my blade right into that piece of wood, and I'm going to create a stopper cut, and I'm going to back up here and I'm going to carve into that using that same technique. So using this, I'm going to carve in to that, and I'm not going to push really hard. I'm going to control the cuts that I do and clean it up by pushing back into there along that same angle, or that same first cut, so that I can back up slowly and get pieces that are a little bit longer, creating what looks like a whistle. And I want to check to make sure that it's straight with this side, because that's going to be where that sits and grabs the next piece. Okay, so now we've got these two parts of our four. What we need now is our cross piece that goes this way, okay, parallel to the ground. And it needs to be, a rough estimate, it needs to be twice the length of these two. So these two are the same length, so I need this cross piece to be twice this length. Okay, so now we have this piece that's twice the length. Okay, and from this side, it doesn't matter which side, but you want the straightest side. So we're gonna take a look at this down here like this, and I'm gonna say that if anything this kind of bows in, but it's I'm gonna want that more than it bowing out away, because I'm gonna put a notch here and then I'm gonna put an opposing one on this side 90 degrees from it, going the opposite way. So I'm gonna have one that goes this way and one that goes this way, and that way this will hook or bend around and bend into that 90-degree angle that's on our upright. So I'm going to set this one first. Again, 1/2 inch to 1 inch in, so about from the tip of my thumb to my first knuckle. Okay, and I'm going to do it on the top of that side that bows. Now I can cut a little bit backwards into this notch right here, and that's going to give me a little bit more grip. And the way I do that is I trim from here and kind of angle the knife in as I'm cutting down, again making kind of like a little hook. And what that's going to do for me is it's going to help that piece catch. So do you see how that it isn't actually straight up and down? It kind of goes back into there just a little bit and has a little bit of a lip, so this has to come out and forward this way. Okay, so we're gonna leave that like that, and I'm going to check it against my piece that has my whistle notch, my long and short angle, and I'm going to make sure that my short angle is on top and my long angle is inside the 4. Okay, like this, and there's enough travel in there so that this will hook and pull, so this will work. Okay, now what I want to do, set this up so that my long angle is on the inside, my long angle here is on the inside. I'm going to set this like this, put it on the ground. Advantage of having asphalt here. And then I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to hook this with the end, and I'm going to lift on the back of this to see where it's pulling or lifting up, like this. Okay, by doing that I can set this trigger where I know it's going to catch when I apply a weight to the end of this trap. So right about there. So I'm going to mark it with my thumb like this, and again when I make this notch, I'm going to make it 90 degrees to that one, and I'm going to oppose it, so I'm going to carve this way instead of this way. By opposing those angles like that, then this trap will set itself when I hook those edges. So we're going to do this and carve this in real quick, and then we want this to back up far enough that it actually will allow this other piece of wood to fit inside there. Now I want this notch here to be as straight up and down as possible, unlike this one that has a little bit of a hook in it, because this is my trigger, and the more straight up and down it is and the shallower it is, the more sensitive the trigger will be. But I want those angles clean so that they'll grip. Remember, if my rabbit weighs 5 to 10 pounds, then my trap needs to weigh between 50, if it's a 10-pound rabbit, that's a heavy rabbit. But 5 to 7 pounds, then my trap's going to be 50 to 70 pounds. And if that's going to fall, it will crush my hand just as fast as it will crush that rabbit. Now, so I've set this and this angle, and they oppose each other. If I pull on these two opposite like this, then they oppose, and they'll sit correctly. Now this side here, this side I can sharpen and bait the trap, put something on it. But I'm going to wait till I see how far underneath the weight this goes, so that I don't set it up against the weight and it defeats the purpose. So I'll sharpen that after I would actually set the trap. Okay, so let me do that. I'll get a heavy log here and we'll set that one. Okay, so real quickly I'm going to demonstrate how to actually set up this trap. This is a figure 4, and I'm going to show you how to adjust the triggers so that it fits underneath the object. Luckily I was able to find this log, and if you were doing this for real, this area right here would be your game trail, and this log would be the heavy weight that you're going to set over the trail and the trigger underneath it, so that the animal trips the trigger and causing this weight to fall on them when going through the game trail. So I'll show you the proper way to set this. First off, we're going to take our two pieces, we're going to pinch them together with our thumb and forefinger, holding this upright piece, and then putting this one on top like this. With my left hand I'm going to lift this heavy weight like so and place it so that it balances on my trigger. I'm not going to let go with my left hand, keeping my my right hand here on this so that it supports the motion or the trigger, the weight of the object, and I'm making sure that this is upright, that's straight up and down and vertical. I would also at this time make sure that I have a hard stone or another piece of flat wood just underneath this piece here, so that it doesn't drive, so the weight of this log doesn't drive this into the ground. Now, with my left hand, I'm going to set this trigger like this, checking to make sure that it's not touching the log. And before I move my right hand, I'm going to make sure that the weight is being supported by the trigger and not my hand. Like so. Now I'm going to remove my hand this way. Now this right here looks like it's touching the log here. So what I'd want to do is trim this back so that it's not touching it at all, or just make sure that it's not touching. Now again, this is where my trail would be. Okay? This over here is not, this is off the trail. This is where the trail is, so the animal is forced to come through here and tripping this lever. Okay? Now, pushing from this direction here, this way, it's pushing against this upright. So this trigger is not as sensitive. Pushing from this direction, it's pushing away from this upright, and it's much more sensitive. The best way to ensure that you get an animal to actually trigger this is by baiting this so that the animal is pulling back and forth on it. Now, I can't tell if the animal is going to come from this direction or this direction, so I want to funnel both sides of the trap in a V so that the animal has a choke point here, where this spot here then becomes the path of least resistance, and the animal moves through the trap. If it's done correctly, when this is pushed, the trap falls, kicking the trap out from underneath it and crushing the animal. That's a figure 4.